From Chicago Sun-Times, feds urged to investigate city's use of COVID-19 relief funds. The city was allocated $1.9 billion in federal relief funds through the American Rescue Plan. Some of that money freed up other city money, which was used to pay debt down.
Oh.
So community organizers and I don't know what ALD stands for, like a title.
Alderman, maybe?
Oh, it could be like, yeah. Alderman Rossana Rodriguez.
Or the person, rather. Sorry.
Yeah. Are calling on federal officials to investigate the city's use of COVID-19 relief funds, claiming the mayor's office wrongly allocated money to pay down city debt instead of helping residents as intended. Maybe this doesn't actually have anything. Oh, no, wait, because they do mention this. They mention.
Wait a minute, though.
Yeah, keep reading. So
while you do that, I'm going to grab a book because I think that Chicago's parking meters are owned by a sovereign wealth fund from Saudi Arabia. Let me grab that book real quick.
Yeah. So Saqib Badi, co-executive director of Action Center on Race and the Economy, accused Mayor Lori Lightfoot of siphoning off hundreds of millions of dollars to large banks rather than investing in public health and safety, which would have helped the city brace for the emergence of the Omicron variant. This lack of foresight, he said, is the reasons schools are closed now. The mayor decided to lock children and teachers out of their classrooms rather than assure that their school buildings were safe, Bhatti said in an online news conference. I use the word decided intentionally, he said. This is a choice that Mayor Lightfoot made when she decided to give our COVID relief money to JP Morgan Chase and other investors. The city was allocated $1.9 billion in federal relief through the American Rescue Plan, which was intended to ease the economic blow that the COVID-19 pandemic had on cities and states across the country. Lightfoot's original plan called for using more than half of that to pay off $465 million in scoop and toss debt and cancel plans to borrow $500 million more. That plan drew criticism from city council members, and when the U.S. Treasury Department guidelines issued in 2021 nixed that idea, the mayor's financial team devised an end run. Oh man, my voice. Instead, the mayor used hundreds of millions in relief funds to replace revenues lost to the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. That freed up other corporate fund revenues, and that money went toward retiring debt that had been refinanced, often called scoop and toss, because it scoops up existing debt, and by stretching out the payments, tosses that obligation further into the future. Last week, the Treasury Department issued its final ruling that states or cities can't use these funds to pay off debt. Here's the thing. Mayor might... God damn it. I'm running on like 5 hours of sleep. Okay? Here's the thing. Mayor Lightfoot, she already did it, Bhatti said. She put off spending the COVID money for half a year, hoping the federal government would change the rules. Our schools and communities lost precious time because the mayor was holding out hope that she would get permission to give away our recovery money to America's largest banks. The mayor's office didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Bhatti and the others urged the Treasury Department to launch an investigation, but didn't say if they had filed anything formal with the agency, despite saying he wants the federal government to claw back our money and make the city use the funds properly. Rodriguez said she and some council colleagues opposed the 2021 budget amendment that would facilitate $1 billion to go to Chase Bank and law enforcement. She added, right now, as we see this crisis unfold in CPS, Chicago Public Schools, we know that the city could have been investing in a lot of different mitigation strategies. For example, testing centers that are run by the Chicago Department of Public Health.
Oh, yeah.
Rodriguez called the maneuvering of city funds to pay down a debt a mystery that must be examined. Emma Tai, director of United Working Families, said it was telling that Lightfoot literally moved mountains in seeking ways to go against the Treasury Department's rules. She had used her political will and political clout to pay the banks, but somehow it's like, oh, more testing and more personal protective equipment. I just don't know how we're going to do that, Tai said. Somehow, we can't get children testing and PPE, but we can pay billions of dollars to Chase Bank. And that's the end of the article.
Well, and so while you were doing that, I got a book, this book is a treasure. It's from the illustrious Matt Taibbi. It's called Grifftopia.
Mm-hmm.
And in the chapter in this book called The Outsourced Highway, Matt Taibbi talks about how the Chicago parking meters, the Abu Dhabi-based investors own at least 30% of Chicago's parking meters, because he's using some sources in the Chicago Sun-Times. And also, too, this book, it was published, I was going to say released, but I'm like, do people use the word release when it comes to books? But this book was published in 2010, so I'm not sure if it changed in the last 11 years. But at least in this time period in the book, to quote, the press stories about the deal invariably reported only that the city of Chicago had leased its parking meters to some combination of Morgan Stanley, Chicago Parking Meters LLC, and LAZ, which is an existing parking management company called LAZ. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Mr. Taibbi, he actually dug a little bit deeper and found out that the Sovereign Wealth Fund, right?
Yeah.
The government-owned Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, which is a sovereign wealth fund, owns some of that. So I'll read, too. Sorry. Mm-hmm. He says it a lot better than I can. So, quote, so while a group of Morgan Stanley infrastructure funds owned 100% of Chicago's Parking Meters, LLC, in December 2008, by February 2009, they had located a minority investor, D-Side Investments Incorporated, to accept 49.9% ownership. So, Tannadice, I think that's right, Investments, a subsidiary of the government-owned Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, owns a 49.9% interest in D-Side. So, man, if you follow the money,
mm-hmm.
I mean, when we talk about all this debt, and we talk about who owns the privatization of these places like parking meters, or things in places like parking meters, parking lots, etc. A lot of it is other countries, man. And so
right,
teachers are protesting over this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Somehow we can't get children testing in PPE, but we can pay billions of dollars to Chase Bank. I mean, our country, no matter Republican or Democrat, it seems like all of our elected leaders, no matter who, are all in the pockets of these banks and all in the pockets of those with money, whether they be foreign or whether they be domestic.
Right.
And it has an effect on education.
Right. Education is just one of the ways they're fucking impacted. Like, and I know this is kind of like a separate issue, sort of, because, so Chicago parking meters, right? And I linked an article to you, too, that kind of confirms what you just said.
I see it.
So, over 36,000 meters across Chicago. Chicago Parking Meters operates the third largest street parking system in the U.S. Investors in the privately held company include Morgan Stanley, Alliance Capital Partners, and the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. So, yeah, private, not just one private interest, not just two private interests, but quite a lot of private interests. So, I can only imagine with my fried brain right now how this intersects with public education in this particular situation right now. Because I think then it would probably be more helpful to ask questions like, okay, So there's this issue that we just read concerning the city's handling, or attempt to handle anyway, this relief money that came from the federal government. So how does that tie into... Because going back a little bit, in that same article we read from the Chicago Tribune, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it seems like the city is perhaps more interested in paying, these large moneyed institutions off rather than prioritizing the safety of public workers, right? So my question is then, like, is the city actually even losing money having teachers go completely remote? I don't fucking know. But
that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, and I don't really have the evidence to formulate an answer. But my ADHD tired brain is very concerned about that particular question. Okay, so it seems like this administration, and I mean, the city of Chicago kind of has a reputation of corruption and shit like that, so it's not particularly surprising that this could be the case. But it seems to me, anyway, that it's likely that this particular administration is more interested in paying off its debt to private entities rather than using its money to pay for teacher salaries, going remote, making sure the needs, not just the demands, but the needs of these teachers and educators are met.
No, absolutely, yeah. And basically all these teachers are asking for, Chicago teachers, is what that wonderful speaker said that I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. We want the same type of protocols. We want the same type of PPE. We want the same type of testing that the private schools have, that the schools like the Catholic schools have, the smaller school districts. So I don't see why that's wrong.
Yep.